Mr. Weevil, you're in a hurry to find out about gravel bikes, aren't you? Well, you're in the right place, because this is Gravel Riding 101. So to answer Mr. Weevil's question, what are the differences between road bikes and gravel bikes? Well, to start things off, think about geometry. I'm not talking about Pythagoras or hypotenuse or anything like that. It's all about head tube angles, defining how vibrations feel from the ground up towards the handlebars. Too slack and it'll feel like an oil tanker. Too steep and it'll be like a road bike, really twitchy and not very safe off-road. And that's where gravel bikes meet in the middle like Mama Bear's porridge. Just right to deflect all those vibrations and you'll be cruising downhill off-road, no problem. Marrying that up with a nice long wheelbase and you are stable on the gravel, the single track and the woodlands just like this one. Well, you're going to want to think about your cockpit as well. And that's talking about bars. There's all kind of variations now of the gravel bikes, but flared is the way forward it seems. Way more comfortable and a nice position for your wrists. Pair that up with a nice soft gel grip and you're going to have a great day on the bike. But how are you going to stop? Well, disc brakes are the answer. You'll find it really hard to get yourself a gravel bike with cantilever or caliper brakes. Disc brakes are the leading edge of technology right now in stopping power, and there's a reason for that. They modulate better, they work well in the wet, and what's more, they are lighter overall. Of course, stopping power is great, but you have to get up to speed first. And with that, you need the right gearing. Gravel gearing comes in all kinds of flavours, 1x or 2x. And you can even get mountain bike cassettes now on the rear to make climbing that much easier. Bring on the ring of power. One big 52 tooth cassette on the rear and you can spin up any hill you like. One ring to rule them all. So you're ready to stop, you got your disc brakes. You're ready to roll, you got your gearing. But are you really ready to roll? Choosing the right tyre for gravel is really important. You need to make sure you use the right tread pattern and get the right compounds to make sure you have a good ride off-road. Now there are so many to choose from. Too slick and in the wet stuff you're just going to slide out. Too chunky and you'll hear yourself rolling real sluggish on the silky tarmac in between the gravel sections out there in the UK. You could go down to 35, slightly quicker, a bit more nimble, or go up to 47 or even 50mm, which is an excellent choice for the rougher stuff. And you could put that on say a 650B set of wheels. These here are 700C by 42mm. Pushing the limit of this bike's tyre clearances, but really comfortable and fast on both tarmac and good gravel. So stopping power, checked. Rubber on the wheels, check. Got your gearing dialed for climbing up hills and pushing up mountains, perfect. But where are you going to go? How are you going to get there? That's where routing apps come in really handy. You got things like Komoot, View Ranger, Ordnance Survey and even Strava. Yes, paper maps do exist still and cartographers still have jobs, which is great news. Ordnance Survey is a great way of getting a detailed idea of the local area. So whether you're going to Norfolk or down to Nîmes, we've got you covered. That's what Ordnance Survey would say if I was working for them anyway. If you are going to resort to digital means, apps are really handy. So you're going to flick through the app, you're going to find yourself a route, an A to B or a nice loop, past a cafe, over a mountain, who knows. But to make use of that, you also need a computer as well. And that's where a little bicycle computer comes in. Not an old Amstrad or a Mac, I'm talking about something nice and compact to go on the bars. Whether that's a Wahoo, a Garmin, Lezyne, or even something like a Hammerhead Karoo. These are all super good systems, and it's worth researching what's going to fit your needs best. Alright, so your route's plotted, your bike's good to go, but what are you going to actually put on that bike to make sure you're self-sufficient out there on the trails? Because gravel riding has a bigger reliance on self-sufficiency than other types of riding. You want to make sure you're ready for any kind of situation that might come up. I don't mean everything, but if it rains, you get cold, you get lost, you get hungry, your bike might break. All these things need to be factored in how you're going to pack your bike. And there are tons of ways you can carry things on the bike. From a canister bag up front, to a frame bag in the middle, a tool roll on the rear, or even a smaller saddle pack. It's all about what works for you. In this canister bag right now, I'm carrying a couple of things which make sense to me for quick access when I do stop. Number one, the all-important rain jacket. Because the last thing you want to do when the rain comes down, you want to be stuffing this out your saddle pack or somewhere inconvenient. Nice and light, and obviously waterproof. Win. And contrary to a rain jacket, SPF protection. Bit of sunblock goes a long way. Whether you want to get a little tan on with the SPF 30 or some Factor 50 sport stick. This is great for your ears, eyebrows, nose and lips, just in case things do get very hot and the sun is in front of you. And really important, essential to make sure your skin is protected at all times. And lastly, I think this is an important one, inner tubes. The one thing you want to think about with inner tubes is make sure you've got the right size valve length. Because there's nothing more embarrassing than trying to fix a puncture when your valve lengths are incorrect. And that's Canister Bag. Really helpful, nice and compact, and quick access on the go. Now of course there is a zipped entry into the bag, but on the sides, left, right, left, there are extra mesh pockets as well. Perfect for storing little snacks that you've half eaten, but more importantly rubbish. Make sure you're not littering anywhere on the trails and anywhere in general. I keep my hanky in here because I'm a hay fever sufferer, and as class as it is, a hanky is not as wasteful as tissues. So one thing to consider when you do have the sniffles. Alright, so now we've got the frame bag. A nice simple piece of kit that fits in your frame, and it's a bag. Inspiring stuff, isn't it? Also, it's kind of cavernous, somewhat like a TARDIS or Mary Poppins handbag. So inside this, the one drive side zip, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that I'm carrying when I go gravel riding. First up is arm warmers. Something handy for early starts, also you can just roll them down to your wrists, but if you get used to them, in the afternoon, just chuck them in the bag and you forget about them until the evening. Alongside them, gloves. Nothing worse than getting biting knuckles with a chill wind, so make sure you've got them handy as well. In the back here there's a really nice handy mesh pocket, great for credit cards or train tickets if you're on a trip. Good for dropping your keys out of as well, but nice little storage to make sure things do stay organised to some degree. Other things I like to consider putting in here are snacks. That's the key thing on most big trips. You want to make sure you've got the space for snacks. So more important than anything else is don't overstuff before you go for a ride. It's always handy to buy things en route, and if you've already put your bags at their maximum capacity, you've got no way of buying more treats. And it's heartbreaking when you can't buy more treats, isn't it? A buff. Again, pairing up with the gloves and the arm warmers, something to protect your neck and your mouth when it does get chilly is really important. Nothing more miserable than going home from a ride and you are chilling out hard. This is something useful as well, and usually carry on with me. This is a nice simple Ziploc from Hiploc. Not very strong, but if you're going to run into a shop for 5-10 minutes, excellent use. And yeah, it's light, folds away, no problem whatsoever. Lastly, tools. Keeping tools handy is really important. There's nothing worse than having a set of plugs and you have a big puncture and you can't get access to them, which is why I carry some plugs and a quick multi-tool in the frame bag. You can dive in and fix everything you need to, no problem. And that is the frame bag. So one quick mention is when you're having something heavy like this tool or even a battery pack in your frame bag, make sure you have some padding around it. It's not going to touch any of the tubes. Down tubes and top tubes aren't designed to be impacted either from top or bottom, so make sure there's nothing hard and no hard edges hitting those frames. So that's why it's always handy to have a buff or some arm warmers in between them to make sure it's all safe. So finishing off this trio of bags, we have the Restrap saddle pack. Really helpful, nice and spacious, and more importantly waterproof. And in some circumstances acts as a mud guard, but don't rely on it just for that. This is super spacious and one of those bags that you can't really access on the move. So you want to think about putting things in there which maybe you're going to use when you do stop. So if you do stop, you might get cold, which is why I'm going to keep a jacket in there, some leg warmers, and some maps here and there. Just because you never know if you're going to get lost, you want to check a map out, you want to stay warm. Great system and works with a Fidlock strap at the top. Nice and compact and works just like a roll bag. So, up first, oh, mystery treat, not actual size. I will always travel with a full size Soaring. This is for reference only. Sometimes gravel riding has a lot of climbing and you might be in circumstances where the terrain gets so rough you're going to be much slower than you realise. It's good to make sure you're prepared when things do get cold, i.e. leg warmers. Pair that up with a nice warm jacket. Whether that's a down jacket or a synthetic layer, it's up to you. Make sure you do have a nice warm layer. From Norfolk to Nîmes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sometimes saddlebags are too much. but also you've got to think about what else you're going to pack with you. So maybe it's a shorter ride, but going off-road can give your bike a little bit of a testing time. So it's important to have tools with you. And with that being said, let's look at the tool roll. The tool roll, really handy for all your essentials on the bike, whether that's tools or spares. But make sure you're thinking about what is pertinent to your bike. Really handy, like I said, for spares and obviously tools. In the middle, really handy to make sure you've got yourself a spare tube. Like I said earlier, always make sure the valve is the right length for your rims and wheels. Spare brake pads, spare hanger, spare piece of chain as well. Make sure you have everything you're going to need to make sure you can get back rolling if disaster strikes. Few things are more damaging than getting a mech hanger bent, which is why these things are super light, super handy, and will get you rolling and changing gears happily up hills in no time. And that's it, that's the tool roll. So in addition to the saddle pack, the frame bag and the canister bag, there are other variations of bags out there. If you wanted to upgrade from the 1.5 litre canister bag, there is the 10 litre handlebar pack, which has a nice set of cords on the front to stuff in jackets or extra snacks, maybe even a few baguettes or croissants, but inside is cavernous. Here though, we have the snack bag. Little thing to put water bottles in, but more importantly, extra snacks if you need to. And a few more mesh pockets here for half-eaten snacks, and more importantly, that rubbish we spoke about earlier. So with this cockpit bag being from the race range, there are other options too, like the top tube bag. And this is the full length top tube bag from the race range. It does come in a half size, but for me this is great, as it has a zip which goes from the back to the front, and vice versa from the front to the rear. Meaning you can have savoury in the front and dessert at the back. Perfect for snacking on the fly. Now it goes without saying, right? Gravel riding gets you outside, gets you into nature. Pair it up with some bike packing bags and a good sleep kit. You can go witness some sunrises and sunsets you didn't realise you were missing out on. Like the wonderful Weevil here. I wouldn't have stumbled across it, I wouldn't have seen it, because I would have been on the tarmac. But the woods, the meadows, the hills, the mountains, they open up the world and make it so much bigger. A fun place to be in. So, gravel riding gets you out there. Enjoy yourself and be safe. Wherever you're going, tell someone where you're going. Get that route plotted, share it with friends, and just have a great time. I'm going to sit and watch an ant's nest for the next 3 hours and see if the wonderful Weevil wants to go for a drink. My calves are cramping. Goodbye.